So I think this is one of those important things to be able to take into account while you are assessing the candidates. That being said, we are now going to start with some of the questions. We're going to start with the opening statements. Sorry.
Correct. Let me see. And those are, to remind the audience, those are 3 minutes each. And we're going to reverse the order later. And we're going to start with Darrell Neer.
Thank you to the moderators and also to the IU College Democrats and the Monroe County Democratic Party for hosting this debate this evening. And I really appreciate this opportunity to be addressing you this evening. Just a little bit about myself. I grew up in North Manchester, Indiana, a small town southwest of Fort Wayne, population 6,500, and grew up in a working class family and ended up being the first person in my family to be able to go to college. And went to DePaul University, graduated, and immediately came to Bloomington for graduate school. And that's where Bloomington started to get its hold on me. I finished the graduate program, went to work in the private sector in Fort Wayne, Indiana for about a year and a half, and after being in Fort Wayne, I decided that Bloomington is a much better place that I would rather live and pursue another graduate degree so I could follow that passion of teaching. And that's where I started to really engage in this community. And I've learned this community from a variety of different perspectives. As a student who was struggling to make ends meet, working extra jobs to be able to pay the rent and to pay for my food, I met my wife and raised a family in this community in our schools. And I've been fortunate to earn my professional life at Indiana University at Kelley School of Business since 1997. But during that time, I was also able to get engaged in not-for-profits from the very beginning of my arrival in Bloomington. And learning the lifeblood of this community that provides so many essential services and support. I also got engaged in radio and talking about public affairs, founded Interchange on WFHB, and that's where I started to get engaged in understanding politics and the political issues of our community. And it was in 2008 that 2 elected officials approached me and said, "Darrell, you have no excuse. Radio career's over, you need to run." And I ran in 2011, earned a seat on District 5 for City Council, served as president for 2 years, and I'm proud of my time on council and I've enjoyed it immensely. And here we are today, 2015, and Mayor Mark Cruzan reached out to me and asked if I'd be interested in running for mayor, and it was a question that I discussed with my wife. We had a deep discussion. Look, I love my life in this community, but the opportunity to serve this community in the capacity of mayor, to be able to help shape the future and some important decisions that the next 4 years will bring before us is a role in public service that I embrace, and I hope tonight I can earn your support to be the Democratic candidate for mayor for the city of Bloomington. Thank you.
Thanks, Gerald. Appreciate being here. I got to tell you, I'm a real different I'm a different breed of cat. I'm not your typical candidate. And about 40 years ago, I was in Amsterdam, and I was smoking a joint in this cafe, and a funny thing occurred to me. It was like an epiphany. It's like, holy cow, this is legal. This is a place where they have reasonable laws. They don't have stupid laws. Okay, just out of curiosity, could I see a show of hands? How many people think that these marijuana laws are reasonable? Anybody? Okay, we got one. Got a couple. Okay, looks to me, none of our candidates here. So my question is, why the hell have we got a stupid law like that? You know, we need to change it. It's crazy, you know? But I'm not a one-trick pony. I believe in all kinds of other things. I believe in a 12, 15-hour minimum wage, you know? Thanks. You know, it burns me up that people should work 50, 60, 70 hours a week and not be able to make it. You know, that's not right. It's wrong. Mr. Hamilton here came out with a brilliant idea, I think, for this municipally owned fiber optic high-speed system. As soon as I heard it, I went, yeah, of course, that's exactly right, you know? So I had to educate myself on it, you know? So I got the brainiest people I could think of to brief me on it. Now I got a plan for how we should do it, how we can get it done. It's extremely important that we don't fiddle around. You know, I'm certainly in favor of, we're all in favor of restoring trust in city government. It's one of the reasons why I got in this thing. I was in India and was trying to decide if I ought to get into it or not. And my wife asked me, you know, if I really wanted to be mayor. And I said, no, I don't want to be mayor. But if I don't enter this thing, there'll be a lot of things that won't be said. There'll definitely be things that will not be done. So, you know, I feel like I have to be in it. Okay, my background's real different. I've been in about 115 different countries. You know, I've seen wars and revolutions and famines, and I've seen things as bad as they get, and I've seen them as good as they can get. And, you know, I've had experiences of wearing a suit, but also getting my hands dirty. So my time's up. Thanks.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to be here. I'm delighted that the College Democrats have put this together. Thank you, College Democrats. Thank you, Monroe County Democratic Party, for being here and letting this happen. Thank you, candidates, for sharing this with me, Daryl and John, to have the stage together. We get to do this every once in a while, but sometimes we're often separate. And thank you all for coming out tonight. You are the elite of Bloomington to care enough about your community to come here, so we really appreciate your time and attention. So, I'm running for mayor. I'm John Hamilton, and I'm running for mayor because I want to be sure that the decisions that we make over the next 4 years are going to give the next generation of Bloomingtonians. Some of us will still be here. A lot of new people will be here. That next generation of Bloomingtonians is going to look back and say, thank you for the decisions that you made. We've had people in front of us in Bloomington's history who've left us an amazing city, beautiful, full of terrific places and spaces and quirky culture and creativity that we enjoy, and we need to do the same thing. I was born in Bloomington. My father taught me to hit a tennis ball in Bryant Park. I walked on 2nd Street to get to school. I went to law school. I have an IU degree. And about 17 years ago, my wife and I, after living in a couple big cities, chose to come back home to Bloomington to raise our kids. I've lived progressive values. I've been a progressive all my life. I've worked as an adult to put those values into place. That means a lot to me, to try to not just have the values, but make results happen. That's what I did at the Department of Environmental Management, which I ran for the state, protecting air, water, making it cleaner. I felt good. That was a good thing to do. It's what I did when I ran the Family and Social Services Administration for the state. 10,000 employees, $6 billion budget. I felt every day I was helping people get health care who needed health care. I was helping people with disabilities live more independently. Those values, putting them into effect. It's what I put my values into effect when I worked to start a community development bank and nonprofit that helped fight racism, economic injustice. And it was at work, those values were at work in Sustainability Commission, which I led here for the city, on the school board, trying to help strengthen our public schools, and at the Shalom Center, where I have tried to help this city work better for some of the poorest people, including a lot of children, very poor in the city. So putting those values to work is really important. And tonight, what I hope we get the chance to talk a lot about is how do we put those values into place over the next 4 years? And I'm going to talk about sustainable jobs, broadband, ways we can help our economy get better, affordable housing, so that Bloomington is a city where everybody can live, whatever your income, and open government and public education, and I'll look forward to talking about that with you as we go. Thank you very much for being here tonight and giving us your attention.
welcome again, and I just want to thank all of you for being here, the candidates, everyone in the audience as well, but thank you also for being patient with our late start and some of the circumstances that brought forward. We're happy that you're all with us tonight. And I think you're all doing a fine job without those notes, so keep it up.
Do our best.
I'll ask the first question tonight, but I want to remind each of you, you'll have 2 minutes to answer. And I think at this point, we'll probably just rotate through you, starting with John Linnemeyer this time. And then we'll start with John Hamilton, and we'll keep rotating. And then for the closing statements, we'll start with John and go the reverse way. Does that sound fair enough? I'm sorry, Mr. Hamilton there. Yeah, I have to distinguish. So, the first question, and this is for Mr. Linnemeyer, first of all. What will be can everybody hear me now? Okay, we need to hold this close, right? That's better? Okay. What will be your administration's policy on city-university relations?
Well, they haven't been too bad and they haven't been too good. You know, I mean, they're the obvious things, you know, to have the high-level committees coordinating, as I say, back and forth between each other. There have been some things that have been very poor coordination, like the tech part and so forth. You know, the city bought it, and then there was very little communication after that. So I think that's very unfortunate. I personally think that sometimes, I mean, it's good to have these formal relationships and so forth between Ivy Tech and IU and so forth, but you also need informal relationships. And I don't know if McRobbie's interested in meeting with me or not. I'd certainly hope he would. I think we ought to meet once a week for lunch or play racquetball or something like that, you know. A lot of things happen under those situations, so I would at least make that overture. So, thanks.
Bloomington is not the same city without Indiana University. Indiana University is not the same university without Bloomington. We depend on each other. As mayor, I would expect and plan to have high-level, regular contacts. I don't know about racquetball. I'm not a racquetball player, but some kind of contacts with the leadership of the university. There's a great deal that we care about together. There obviously are going to be some different viewpoints, and that's fine. That's been my my pattern through the jobs I've had, to be able to work very well with other folks. I think there's some things we can specifically work on together. For example, meeting just a couple weeks ago with Lou May, the head of Bloomington Transit. I know the bus systems are doing things together. They can do more together. The bus systems right now, Bloomington Transit does the repairs on the IU buses. As you know, students can ride free on both. Well, they pay through their tuition, but they ride without a ticket on each. We can actually integrate those bus systems. I'd actually like to see BT and IU and the county really integrate bus systems much better. That's some things we can do. Housing is really a big issue. I care deeply about affordable housing. A lot of the university's policies affect the economy, the housing of our city, and working on that together is a very important thing that I look forward to. I think there's some things that the university can help us do with affordable housing. And broadband. University is one of the leading informatics schools in the country. We have an incredible group of people who know so much about technology and who'd like to stay here. One of the things we can do is try to help make this the kind of city and economy that they want to stay in by having broadband internet that would give high-speed connections to everybody. University is part of GigU already. We have Digital Underground, which is a great thing for us to have. And lastly, I'd really like to engage students. We have a lot that goes on now between the city and the university with lots of people volunteering. I'd like to have a Mayor's Fellows program. That would be elite, maybe 12 students a year, work for the full year, getting credit during school, and then full summers with us. I think that'd be a great thing to recruit students to do that and get engaged in city government.
About 13 years ago, the city and Indiana University had a strong standing relationship with one another, quarterly meetings where the university met with the city of Bloomington, and that collaboration was strong. And we need to re-engage that relationship once again. And it's those quarterly meetings are important because instead of dealing with issues as a crisis by crisis issue that may arise between the city and the university, we can be much more proactive. And it shouldn't just be the city of Bloomington in the room, it needs to be Monroe County government in the room as well. If you think about it, we have a land use plan. The city of, the Monroe County government has a land use plan. Indiana University has a land use plan. What are those interactions between those choices and decisions, and what are the impacts on our community? And having that broad discussion is an important part of that relationship. I would also highlight that there are other issues that we can engage the university on, specifically when we talk about economic development related issues. I mean, there is great work going on across departments on this campus. People who are entrepreneurial and being able to engage in finding ways to deliver the type of opportunities that they need to build their businesses in Bloomington. And I think that those are opportunities that we can take advantage of. And the students, we already have a strong relationship with the students in the city. The SPIA Core program has been phenomenal in placing students and helping with local government. But what I would love to be able to see is that stronger relationship between student and city, and have students recognized for what they're doing. I mean, the economic impact that Indiana University students have on this community for volunteer hours alone is roughly $43 million. And that's student and faculty on volunteer hours. They help drive our social services, and the hours that they provide, they are of value. We need to recognize them, and we need to keep them engaged in our community.
Thank you. Before we go on to the next question, I just wanted to, pardon me? 5 minutes of discussion. After these questions are finished, correct? I'm sorry, pardon me. Consultation, I thought it was the 2 questions, or is it open discussion, 5 minutes after? Okay, okay. My apologies to the candidates and to the audience. I didn't repeat this earlier, but after each question, and you each have a chance to individually respond, then there will be 5 minutes of open discussion about the same issue. Do I have that correct? Thank you very much.
Same order. Go ahead.
So ready to go, open discussion on the same question. Open discussion on the same question.
Yeah, I could hardly disagree with anything these 2 gentlemen said. Some people think I have an inordinate number of, creative, innovative ideas and so forth. But really, most of the ideas come from other people, I like John's idea. I like several other people's idea. Give me an idea. I'm a good listener, give me some details. Let's put some numbers behind it. And if it works, I'll adopt it, I like some of your ideas too. I like that idea about.
Well, thanks, John.
I think you're all right.
One of the things, we're kind of feeling our way here. I hope you understand we're to see how this works. One of the things I think I think we all know is voting participation is low in the country, in the state, in our city, and it's a great thing to figure out how to build that pattern early. I know we all are encouraging students to be active in our campaigns, and many are, which is terrific. We have students on our campaigns. I know one of mine who's gone up to testify at the State House, and those kind of patterns are important. A student who rides a bus early in life will be comfortable riding a bus later in life, and a student who votes will be comfortable and build a pattern of voting. So I do think the engagement of city government, which sometimes is a government that feels like you can make more happen than far distant marble building places, can be a very exciting place. And I certainly look forward as mayor to engaging. There is a lot of interaction already, but I think there can be more. I taught a class in high performance government at SPIA, and students who want to get involved in making government work better, it's a really exciting opportunity. And hey, come by. The come by any of the campaigns, right? We welcome anybody. Come by and check it out, and we'd love to have your involvement.
And there are other broader collaborations that we can pursue, excuse me, with Indiana University. I mean, we see many of those collaborations already taking place when we talk about the arts community and the strong presence that Indiana University in the theater and music department and in relationship with the Bloomington-based theater programs, and we're seeing much more engagement and interaction with the actors and actresses who are coming into those programs and doing great work. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention that we do have relationships with Indiana University that raise some questions about some of the participation. We talk about issues with fire department related issues and the number of runs that we have with our fire department to Indiana University campus that are false alarms and added expense, and that contribution and the level of contribution that the university puts into that process. And the other part that is in process, and I know these conversations have been going on, and how does Indiana University and the city of Bloomington work together when we talk about student behavior, right? There are moments with alcohol-related issues in the community that we can work together in an educational capacity as well to help set expectations higher that allow us to have that broader conversation and have a positive impact on our downtown.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah, something that John brought up here that it's extremely important. It's extremely important. And about democracy and how people aren't participating in it and how there's too much money in it and so forth. I hate to tell you, but democracy is not doing well in the world. It is not doing well. For a long time, we thought that capitalism, freedom, democracy, free elections and stuff like that they all fit together, and that was the way to prosperity. Well, the Chinese and to a certain extent the Russians have shown us that that's not true. And it used to be that there were more democracies every single year. Well, in 2007, it started to go the other way, started to turn the other way. And we've got to show that democracy can work. I mean, it's not doing so well in Monroe County.
Can I follow up on one thing
Sure.
on your wages? Because I agree with you about wages. This is one thing students in the city could work on together. 3 things to help the university perform better as a public citizen. Number 1, increase wages. Let's put some pressure. Let's figure out how to increase wages in the university. Number 2, local food. More local food in the university. And number 3, better procurement. All those things are things we could work on together, because I think you're right.
Right, so the next question pertains to the balance between development and the character of the community. And so we're going to start with John Hamilton, and if you can discuss how you will promote sustainable development in Bloomington.
How to promote sustainable development in community.
Yes.
I love that. I was the chair of the Sustainability Commission. I care deeply about how to make Bloomington, how to help Bloomington be a more sustainable city. Less energy use, more walkable, more bikeable. One of the first things I also want to do is better control the development that we've had. I think in the last 10 years, we've had downtown development that has been out of control. I think we should follow the height limits. What just happened on Kirkwood Avenue of getting approval through the administration's support of a 70-foot hotel in a 40-foot zone should not happen. I stood on the corner of Walnut and Kirkwood a week ago, and I looked down and I saw Sample Gates and Indiana University, and I said, I want that vision to be there 50 years from now. It's still looking like a pedestrian-friendly avenue. That doesn't mean no change. Don't get me wrong. We will change. There's all kinds of things that can be innovated, but we don't want to turn it into a concrete canyon, and we've already had that happening in some places. So part of this is setting clear, tight standards for better-looking buildings, for more energy-efficient buildings. That's one I would have stopped, and I think the mayor and the council could have stopped it. You know, I worked hard to try to keep the hospital downtown, which would be a very sustainable thing. I think it's a difficult thing to get done, but we worked hard to try to do that. I would like to publish energy usage of buildings. Information is really powerful. If you found out you're a commercial building owner and you have one of the 10 least efficient buildings in Bloomington, you're going to probably do something about it. That's something the city can do too. Thanks.
It all starts with the current revision of the growth policies plan right now. We're going to see a draft in August. And here's what I'm going to ask everyone in this room, and I'm saying this at house party after house party after house party. If you choose not to vote for me, I ask for one thing, that you please get engaged in this process, because the document is a vision document for Bloomington, and it will define what we look like over the next 25 years, 15 years, 25 years. And it'll influence how we put together our zoning codes as well. So get engaged, because that's where the real impact is possible. Because what we can do is we can set, again, I agree with John on this one, and I've been saying it for a long time, we can set higher standards for what the expectations are for green building design, for reuse. We can incent it in code, and when I say incent, I'm not talking about dollars. I'm talking about other mechanisms when we talk about density and parking allotments and allowances. Those are real possibilities that can drive that process. I would also highlight that when we talk about that building that happened on Kirkwood, the hotel, it should have never happened. I don't know, it happened, and what we needed to do is stop it. And I brought forward legislation, and we'll be hearing in council in the very near future that will kick this up to council for any height waiver review in the near future. Anything that would exceed that 40-foot height limit on that Kirkwood corridor or a core downtown will be a city council responsibility, and that's an obligation that we should embrace and we will embrace. But it's also acknowledging that one of the most important decisions that whoever will be mayor in the next 4 years has the appointment capabilities of the Plan Commission. Those decisions are vital. Those decisions define direction, and those are decisions that I take seriously. Thank you.
Okay, sustainability, that's a very interesting concept. I think these things should not be theoretical. Let me give you an example. We've got our bus system, and you know, just take a look at the ridership on that bus system, and I think you'll notice that all of the IU routes, they're all filled. But these other routes are very thin. 1 person, 2 person, 3 person, maximum of 5 person. I'm sorry, but that is not green. That is not sustainable. There's this bill going through right now to get $1.5 million for the bus system. The idea is that it's going to give us more routes and more hours and so forth. That's $1.5 million. For $600,000, everyone in Bloomington could ride anywhere, anytime, and that's the reason the IU students fill those buses, because they pay ahead of time. I asked a bunch of students, they were in my house, and I said, how many of you would ride the bus if you had to pay $1 every time? And you know what they said? I don't mean half of them or a fourth of them. Every single one said, never. So don't, you know, I'll eat my hat if taking the price down to 0 would not, and that's only 40% of this 1,500 or 1,500,000 thing that we're going to have. Okay, that's it.
Open discussion?
So, hey, John, I want to congratulate you, because I think you had a good idea too about sewer connection fees. I think that's a way to help deal with sustainable development. You've talked about trying to make sure we don't have loopholes for large buildings. That's a technical issue, but specific. One other way I think inclusion that sustainable development would be supported is inclusionary zoning. This is something, Daryl, you supported in 2011, I think, when you ran. Talked about inclusionary zoning, but I don't think the council's taken any action on it in the last 4 years. Inclusionary zoning would require, when big complexes get built, either a building or a group of houses, that some of them are held to be affordable. kept affordable. That's a sustainable, big sustainable issue for our city, so that people without a lot of income can afford to live downtown and close in and not be pushed out. Not get the old rule that says drive till you qualify. You have to keep going farther out till you find something you can afford. That's very unsustainable in terms of development. Renewable energy is also really important for sustainable energy. We should have solar on the city hall roof. The county did it, the city didn't. We need to do that, and that's something that could have been done over the last few years as well. And then lastly, I just think we need to take action. We talk pretty well in Bloomington, but sometimes we don't walk, literally and figuratively. And an example is the height limit. The hotel on Kirkwood was not the first building that exceeded the height limit. We've had many buildings exceed the height limit, and the administration and the council have let that happen. I think the growth policies plan is really important. I agree with that. It hasn't been updated since '02, I think. I mean, it's been a long time. We should have really been updating that and looking at that and saying, look what's happening downtown. These are getting too tall. So I'll let others jump in.
And it's a process, that GPP process, Growth Policies Plan process, unfolds every 10 years. And it's this process where it's undergoing, and it has been delayed, and it needs to be moving forward, and it's moving forward now. What I would point out that discussion about inclusionary zoning and affordable housing issues, when we've kicked that off in 2013, the conversation about putting together that affordable housing task force working group, and that's ongoing. And thank you to Councilwoman Sandberg, who is here, and Councilmember Sturbaum, who are part of this to drive this discussion forward. We also, and John, I think we need to make sure that we acknowledge and understand we've got to think also beyond inclusionary zoning, the possibilities, because this is one of the tragedies that happened at the state. The state is stripping us of our opportunities to do a variety of things. House Bill 1300, and I hope everyone in this room is lobbying against it, it would effectively take away our ability to do inclusionary zoning in our community. Now, there are alternatives for us to be able to do workarounds, and it looks like that those possibilities are, again, based on incentives around density considerations. So instead of saying here's the 20% set aside that will be looks like it'll be taken away by the Indiana legislature, instead saying, okay, if you want to increase density in trade, this is where you're going to put in the percentage. This is where you make it possible. And if you're not going to do it, then you're going to pay accordingly into a fund that allows us to, as a city, look for other areas where we can support affordable housing projects. It's a model that's worked in other communities, and it's a model that I think can work here. And John, regarding the Sustainability Commission, we served together, vice chair. I was the vice chair of the Sustainability Commission at that time, and Susan Brackney, and Susan Brackney, and Catherine Stafford and I, I'm proud of that moment because we put together those measures that are used in that report that have been driven forward ever since that point. Yeah, and it was good work. It was good work.
Let me have a minute here.
Sure.
Okay. Now, let me see if I understand that. People are in favor of higher density downtown, but somehow they don't want the buildings to be taller. I mean, both of those ideas are politically correct, but which one are you going to choose?
It's about place. It's
Okay.
about location.
So I just want to clarify one thing, Darrell. House Bill 1300 is a bad bill.
It is.
It does not deal with inclusionary zoning. It deals with Section 8. It says if you're a landlord, you can't be forced to take Section 8, which is a bad bill.
It's
And
the
I sure
second
hope the
clause, John.
legislature.
It's
No,
the
the
second
second clause
clause.
says are similar programs.
Or programs like it, and this is where
This is not a Section 8 program. Section 8
This
is
is-
a public subsidy.
This is where the difficulty comes in the interpretation, and the legal interpretation at this point that we are hearing is this will be a catch-all opportunity for the State House to do this.
Burlington, Vermont put inclusionary zoning in 24 years ago, and they have 1,400 permanently affordable units downtown. We should do it right away.
On to our next question, and I believe we're starting with Mr. Nair on this question, and it is, what will you do to stay on top of fiscal issues this time around?
What will we do to keep on top of fiscal issues this time around? First and foremost, I want to say that there are 600 plus strong employees who do great work every single day, and their reputation has been tarnished by the actions of two. And when the first scandal broke with Justin Wyckoff, we acted. And we approached the administration and said, what are you going to do to be aggressive about putting internal controls into place? And the first note is, those internal controls started prior to that scandal when Sue West was controller of the city, and she put in a variety of internal controls to strengthen. Subsequent to that process, we have seen additional internal controls, segregation of powers, additional oversight put into place, as well as a financial policies manual that is brought forward by the administration to the council. And these changes have strengthened our overall oversight of the city. Now, there are a couple of things that I think that are possible that we need to do, and that's the most important is putting into place rolling audits that are consistent throughout the year, reviewing city budgets and individual budgets and focusing that, because you have those internal audits that continue to go throughout the local government, those individual budgets, you have that consistent oversight. We will also get additional guidance, and we'll see exactly how strong those controls are when the State Board of Accounts releases its report, and that report should be very soon. And we will see how our internal controls are living up to those expectations, and then we can take further actions of how we do it. One other step that I'd love to be able to see us do, and it's something that I will discuss with my council colleagues, put council also in a legislative, put the legislation in place for oversight and working to develop those controls with local government.
Okay, well, I think this is, I don't know, probably restoring trust in local government. That may be the most important issue we're dealing with. And frankly, I think that should start with our own campaigns. You know, I can't see any possible good that can come from taking money from a business that does business with the city. And you know, let's not have any loopholes, you know. Let's not have, it shouldn't be allowed to have an owner of a business or the spouse of that owner or an employee of that business or a spouse of that employee. Before I take any money from anybody, and I'll tell you, they got to chase me down. I don't even have a tab on my website about how to donate. If you want to donate some money, you got to run me down. So, you know, I think we should restrict it. I don't think it should take $100,000 to run for mayor. I think that's a terrible example, and I think we should start with the way we live our own lives. Start with the way we run our own campaigns. And I don't know, do I get an extra 10 seconds? 30 seconds, okay. Okay, we've had, oh, I don't know if I want to, well, let's not get into that. I think it's important, you know, I've had all kinds of hats on my head, but one of them is I ran a small business, you know, and to me, paying the right price for things is crucial. And I see these prices for things, you know, they're just crazy. You know, how in the world, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Okay.
We're a very progressive city. I'm very progressive. We need to be the ones to run government best. We need to make it accountable, because there are a lot of people who think government can't be trusted. I believe government can be trusted, but it's got to be run right. We've had some mistakes that have happened in our government, both city and county, and we need to do some basic things right. Segregation of duties and some of the things that have been done recently are important. Two people did really bad things. Accountability is important for government overall, though, to send a signal to everybody that this is not acceptable, and if you're overseeing a system like this, there have to be consequences. When I went to the Family and Social Services Administration with 10,000 employees and a $6 billion budget, I arrived, we had 5,000 contracts a year. 50% of them were late. They were not done according to public requirements. That wasn't good. Within 2 years, we knew that wasn't. Within 2 years, me and my team got it to 99% on time. When I got to the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, 800 permits covering polluters in the state were way overdue. They had not been updated, so they were working on old emission standards instead of the new, tighter ones. They've been that way for years. I said, we need to fix that. Within 2 years, all 800 were on time, back on time, and we issued new permits on time. This is important to me, and it's important to me personally because government needs to work. And we who believe in government need to make it work. I just announced yesterday 3 things. I think there have been some important steps that have been taken, but there are 3 things more that I need to do. And one of them comes from John's sign. Whistleblowers welcome is a good sign.
Thanks, brother.
I announced yesterday as mayor, I will put in place not only a sign that says whistleblowers welcome, but a 24/7 hotline, anonymous, that goes not only to the mayor, but also to city council. So both of us, you can anonymously report any problem you see. I will create a fiscal control task force of volunteers for 90 days to figure out what else we can do better. And we'll publish every contract, everything we can possibly publish, so you can see what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's dynamite, John, and what the hell, let's all agree to do that. What do you say?
I think the online portion is an important part, and it's actually really, it should go beyond publishing the ledgers that are approved by each board and commission. I think that we go beyond that, and we can put together an accountability scorecard that looks at how we're delivering all of our essential services online. I mean, being able, in the city of Boston has a great model. And we can take and we don't have to reinvent anything. We can take a look at how you can go to a website, you can identify, you go to Public Works, you can take a look at what the services are that Public Works delivers, you click on a button, you see if we're living up to our obligations. We set goals, we meet those goals, we don't meet those goals, we can set new strategies moving forward. I think it's a great model that we should be able to pursue. And the idea of what we're talking about in terms of fiscal oversight. I mean, John, I'm glad to hear all of the things that went well, but let's talk. Could we talk about some of the things that didn't go well at FSSA? And if we could talk about Matthew Rabley situation. I mean, you know, and you manage that process, and you understand those mistakes happen. But we need to have that honest conversation about understanding how those problems arise, how you end up in local government to try to manage it, and those types of issues are important that we should be able to discuss openly.
You want to explain who Matthew Rabley is to people, or
No.
I mean,
He was indicted, $1.6 million that was involved, federal indictment.
That's right.
And we had other.
We caught him.
You caught him.
Look, I'm really proud that I've run 2 big state agencies with a $100 million budget and a $6 billion budget. No doubt, I've been in the trenches. As I said, 5,000 contracts a year, 50% of them were late. There are bad actors in government. They are out there. And you often don't know who they are. You ask anybody in the city of Bloomington, they thought Wyckoff was the greatest guy. He's a friendly guy. Nobody could believe it. You've got to have systems in place that catch him. When I was at FSSA, I'm very proud of what we did. We increased the audits by 50% while I was there. Dramatically increased finding those kinds of problems. Now, Darrell, I don't know what change the city did over the last 4 years while this stuff was brewing, and it's important. You know, I care deeply about government working right, because there are enough people who want to point at government as a problem. There are plenty of them. We're the ones who want to make it work right. That's why we put 50% increase in fraud protection. That's why I reduced the error rate in Medicaid as part of FSSA from 13% to 2%. It takes hard work, it takes diligence, and it takes accountability. And I'll tell you what else we did when we were at FSSA. When we found people who did things wrong, they may get caught, but you know what else? Their supervisor are held accountable too.
John,
Wait,
I want to make sure that happens, John.
We're running out of time, and I would like to give Mr. Linnemeyer a chance to have some
thanks.
words.
I appreciate that. I hate to be a pain in the neck, but why won't you guys refuse to take money from those places and close those loopholes? I think we should do that.
I think campaign finance reform is a great idea. I really do.
Well,
and
let's
we
do
all
it.
agreed. We all agreed not to take corporate contributions.
Yeah,
I think
but what does
some
that
cities.
mean, man? If
It means don't take money
if
from-
the owner can give money, then it's a sham.
Yeah, some cities actually have, like New York and others, actually have public matching to encourage smaller donations. So that, and I think we could look at that too. I think everything ought to be on the table
Well,
of how we can
let's
improve
do
the
it.
campaign
I
finance
wish
system.
you guys would do that. I honestly do. I might not have been in this thing if I saw that was happening. Okay.
The next question, and this time we are starting with Mr. Linnemeyer. What would be your next step in dealing with the hospital situation?
Well, we got whipped. What can I say? We weren't on top of it. There was a point where this women's group had control of the hospital. We had community control over the hospital. Well, we were asleep at the switch. This group of people overwhelmed them, and before you know it, they had sold a Clarion, and I mean, people were thinking 3 steps ahead of us on all these things, and we weren't. Okay, so here we are. We're in a lousy situation, but let's try to turn it into a better situation. But now we need to think 3 steps ahead. What are we going to do with this hollowed out situation? Well, I think there are all kinds of things we should do. I think we should engage philanthropy a little bit more. You see the bus chum down there at, it's a beautiful facility. I know the Chumleys. They're good friends of mine. I knew Gary, and one thing he said, he was a no jive kind of guy. He said, look, we're either going to give it away on the state taxes or we're going to do something cool with it. Well, I think we should work with people like that. They might want to have a sculpture garden with their name on it, or a band shell or something cool. There's a lot of money out there that could be used. And I think we should also be engaging regular people, in these things, and not just big shots who come up with ideas about what we can do with this space.
It's a really important question. There was a column written by a former mayor who said this is a once-in-a-century decision to have a second-largest employer leave downtown and move outside city limits. I think some of you know I talked a lot about this over the last several years. I felt it was a decision that the community needed to engage seriously in. I felt the administration, both the mayor and the council, did not aggressively enough look at what it would take to keep the hospital downtown. I'm a very practical guy. I know the hospital, some people think they made the decision 10 years ago when they bought the land. Others think they made it just in January. It does depend upon the parent to decide that. I do think it reflects, as John said, this is a 110-year-old institution. I was born there. My wife gave birth there. A lot of people have given blood, sweat, and tears to keep that place alive, and that's a shame to see it lose. I want it to be successful. A $300 million investment is great in our community. It would be better downtown. The next steps, I think, are going to be really important for the city. There are cities all across the country that have dealt with this, some well, some badly. Some of it depends on luck. Is there going to be an entity that wants that land? We have a fair amount of empty land in the city. But I think having a task force to look at that intensively with a great variety of people on it who can explore those opportunities is good. I would say this. On February the 13th, the hospital said it will cost us millions of dollars more to stay downtown. On February the 18th, the hospital said it'll cost us tens of millions of dollars more to stay downtown. I wanted to know how many millions of dollars more, because if it's 20 or 30, that's one thing. If it's 80 or 90, it's another. And part of that relates to how much money is the hospital saving and how much might they do to help the community deal with it. They're a 501c3 organization, and they need to have the community at their heart, and I think they do, but they also are a pretty serious business that's looking at that. So.
I've said from the beginning, I'd love to see the hospital be able to stay downtown, and I would hope they would stay downtown, but acknowledging that we have to do the work parallel to do the planning to ensure that that doesn't become a brownfield. And it's not just the hospital land, it's the ancillary businesses that are surrounding it. Those ancillary businesses are going to follow the hospital, and that's going to put a tremendous burden on our city if we don't plan aggressively. And as part of this process, look, Richmond, Indiana has a hospital on their hands that will roughly cost them $6 million to take down. We can't be in that situation. And so this conversation about the hospital site reutilization committee, which I'm very happy to be a part of, the word accountability needs to be the word that we say often. And that includes a commitment from the hospital to think about the revisioning of what that land can possibly be. A commitment from the hospital that if that property cannot be reused, that they will be accountable and take care of the demolition and environmental remediation that would go along with it. And that final step is I also believe that this was a community hospital, and this land could be and should be given back to the community for further use. And there are possibilities, and we need to think big about what the possibilities are. And with that plot of property, and I've said it before, and I think that looking at this as a possibility for affordable housing, truly affordable housing, single-family housing, and you could have an employment center there as a possibility, that is an option. Take the price of land out of the conversation, and you could make that possible. And there may be other alternatives that come out of that visioning process, but this site reutilization committee is our opportunity to get answers as well as envision and build out what that future will look like.
Time that one, right?
Yeah. An open discussion?
Open discussion portion is now available.
Well, I'll jump in. Well, I do want to say that it's simply not true that the city hadn't been working with the hospital to try to keep them there. This dates back to 2007 and trying to ensure and talking about how do we make the connection out to 37 to have the connectivity that the hospital needed. What type of investment in infrastructure was necessary to be able to try to keep them there? And council member after council member, myself included, and John, you met with me in 2012 and to talk, you asked me, we had that conversation, and I met with the hospital. And the same conversation that went on with hospital leadership has gone on year after year after year. We have the information we need, and we are going to be making the decision on our own. And no matter how much you pushed and how much you tried to press, you didn't have a dance partner. We have a relationship now and that opportunity to continue that conversation now. And the effort was there. We will continue that effort now when we have the hospital sitting at the table with this reutilization committee.
So I don't want to revisit this issue. I think elections are about the future. They're about what we're going to do, how we're going to make the city better. I do think they're about leadership too, and how leadership has been exerted. I personally believe large organizations never like to have their decisions made more complicated by people telling them they want to get involved. They don't like to dance. Sometimes they have to be dragged out onto the dance floor. And I do think leadership means, on behalf of the community, saying, we will spend what's needed to get the 2nd Street connection. Let's take that off the table. Let's say that's not an excuse, hospital. Let's say we can fix that. And we will get you the property you need to build a new site right here. Let's take that off the table, because the city could have done that. Now let's talk about how much more expensive it is to build. if you have the land and you have the connection to the interstate. And then let's talk about that. Let's see. Because it's really important to our community that we explore that. And if the answer is it's $100 million, that's a tough nut to crack. If the answer is, if I take those other things off the table, it's $20 million, we can talk. Let's start dancing. Let's listen to the music. And Daryl, I actually asked you, I said, I don't know how much money it was. The hospital's not answered. You said the other week that it was between 30 and 100. Now, I don't know where that number came from, but that's what you said the cost was. And if it's 30, hey, we might be able to do it. But
Just having the
Yeah,
conversation,
no,
Sean.
I think you
Right?
guys are both a little sanguine about the attitude of the hospital and, whether or not we can talk them into doing it and so forth. Frankly, let's follow the money. Look at who owns the land out there. Look into it a little bit. Look who's going to profit from the darn thing. That'll tell you a lot about why the hospital's moving in. Well, it makes me sore, really does. But, I mean, if they wanted to do it downtown, there's 27 acres. They could, there's parking that could be. I'm sorry?
It's time to wrap up.
It's okay. Keep going. Keep going.
Yeah.
There's a little more time.
Oh, okay. They could have done it, but they didn't want to do it, and they're not going to do it. And it makes me mad, but there you are. As you say, we're going to have to look forward, though.
Yeah.
We do.
I would just say, as your mayor, I will be a very strong negotiator on behalf of the city moving forward, because I do think we need very strong leadership to mobilize the community to say, let's get the very best thing we can out of this, whether it's housing, whether it's a new facility of commercial development, manufacturing development. There's all kinds of options, but we need to have very strong leadership that deals with these kind of large institutions to say, let's do this right. And we've seen it done relatively well with Thompson Consumer Electronic when they left, because we got a lot of pressure on that company to do it right, and that's what we need to do.
We actually needed to wrap up after John Winnemeyer. I apologize
Oh,
for
I'm
not
sorry.
being a little clearer about that. So we're going to move on to the next question. We live in as you are all aware, we live in a very arts-rich community, performing arts, visual arts, and more. Specifically, this person is interested in hearing, as mayor, how you plan to support the Buskirk-Chumley Theater.
Me first?
Yes.
Yes.
Isn't that right? Is that right? My next, I can't remember.
Whatever you say,
Yes.
that's fine.
Is that right?
We believe it is.
Okay, good. Do you guys remember? I don't remember. We get lost, so am I next? Okay. I believe you.
Who's on first?
So I'll keep buying tickets and going to the shows. It's an incredible facility. When I started talking about the beginning of this evening, the creativity, the innovation, the arts, the quirkiness, the innovation and feel of the city is so important. And a lot of that comes because we are such an arts-driven city. We have people who are so creative, whether it's in music or dance or visual arts or performing arts and others. We have this incredible university with the music school and all that's so important. And I do think that an asset like the Buskirk-Chumley is critically important. The city does provide support for the Buskirk-Chumley. I think that support has actually been declining a little bit in the last year, and there's some pressure on them. It's very important that we protect that asset for the city. Certainly, Bloomington has a very strong philanthropic community that we want to engage and get involved in that. And I think, as mayor, I will be attending many of those events and working with the arts community. One thing I really like to do, and as mayor would do, is convene leadership from various groups, for example, the arts, and say, let's go look at some cities. Let's find some cities that are doing some of the best things for arts. What's Madison, Wisconsin doing that we're not doing that's supporting the arts? What's Berkeley, California doing that we're not doing? What's Burlington doing? What's Austin doing? What's Champaign doing? What's Nashville doing? Nashville, Tennessee, or Indiana, either one. let's learn from these great art-supporting cities around the country and try to do the best we can to learn from them.
I'll say directly, as mayor, I will support the Buskirk-Chumley because it is an iconic location in our community and it deserves our support. We saw the potential reduction of that support in this last budget cycle. And I see Councilmember Volan in the audience, and Councilmember Volan and I worked together to put pressure to ensure that that funding stayed in place. And that was an important piece of the Buskirk-Chumley's funding mechanism for this year. That funding mechanism has been stable and it was planned to be reduced out. And we cannot let that happen. Currently, the way that we end up funding the Buskirk-Chumley and supporting it is through TIF dollars, and so you would take those dollars and it would be invested into capital expenditures. We need to see if there are other ways that we can provide that support so it's not just about a capital investment. Are there ways to be able to help support the operational costs as well? And looking into how can we help the Buskirk-Chumley. Again, as a mayor, you have a bully pulpit at your disposal to help drive again the growth of an endowment to ensure the fiscal health of the Buskirk-Chumley for the long term. Because what we do know is one of the three factors of economic development is that strong quality of life, and that foundation of strong quality of life is something we do well and we must continue to do well.
Okay, sometimes when people are trying to get a handle on me, you know, whether am I left, right, or center, you know, sometimes I'm left, sometimes I'm right. I tend to be I like to think that I'm pragmatic. Let me tell you something I'm way left on. I really want to lavish some money on the arts community and parks too, switchyard parks. That's where our emphasis ought to go in. You know, I don't, you know, we bought some real gold-plated storm sewers and some garages that we paid too darn much for, and a bunch of other things I could mention, you know. But like the bus chum is, it's $25,000 short because of this TIF fund, and they restricted it so it could only be used for construction, capital improvement, stuff like that. They tighten it up at the state level and so forth. So they're $25,000 short. That's very little. I think we can easily afford to find the funds to fix that up and make sure, because when I see these things like the bus chum or the Cardinal stage or these things, or well, I could mention all kinds of things where you can see a tremendous amount of support from volunteers, where you can see people squeezing every nickel out of the money that they get. Boy, that's the kind of thing I want to support, you know. And I think they're doing a terrific job. One last thing, I hear that this Dr. Hadawi, who is he's founded Volunteers in Medicine. I mean, you know, what better citizen could we have than that? Anyway, he came here after coming to a musical production.
Thank you.
Are we doing open discussion, or are we, what's the rule here on this one?
We are going into open discussion now.
Just checking.
Thank you. Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
Well, I'll start just to try to get it going. I guess one of the things that artists need to do is have a place to live in our community too. We have a fantastic arts community here, but I know there's a lot of pressure both on residential costs and studio space and practicing space and others. And that's why I care deeply. I've worked a lot in affordable housing, so I care deeply about making sure this community works for people, no matter what your income is, no matter what your education level is, no matter what your background, that this community today and tomorrow and 20 years from now and 50 years from now is going to be a welcoming community for you. And that means artists, because you know, if artists can't afford to live in our community is way poorer for it. So inclusionary zoning, which again is something we should have done, is something I will push very hard to get going right away so we can keep affordable housing for artists and be more flexible about, there's ways to do community land trust commercial space too. There's a lot of pressure on retail costs. A lot of artists and small business people feel pressure from the increased commercial costs downtown, and they can't afford a studio there. They have to move out. So let's think about how to help that happen in commercial nodes around the city and do better to support them. I agree. I mean, this city, we live with art in our blood. It's part of our DNA. It's part of this university's incredible gift to the community as well. And we need to work very hard to make sure we are a place where artists can thrive and live from all kinds of art. So I'd be committed to that as your mayor too.
Well, that's really great. You know, I always love it when all three people are on board for these things, and I think we are. I think that's terrific. The arts are one thing, you know, if I just want to pile on a little more, the arts are one thing that even if they had no economic advantage whatsoever, that's what civilized life is all about. You know, what's the use of having $1 jillion and a Lexus and so forth if you have no culture, if you have no art? But the funny thing is, it's like so many things, it turns out that it's even good economically. You know, I think John mentioned one time how the CEO, a lot of times, what company moves into Bloomington depends on if the CEO likes the place, you know. So, I mean, it's absolutely a win-win situation, and I really think for that and switchyard parks that we need to pull out the stops and absolutely support that 100%, you know. And I mean, there are an awful lot of things, as I said, that tick me off that we're paying too much for. I mean, I like Crawford House. That's a nice place. I'm glad that 25 people can live there, but all right.
All federal money, John.
Okay, it's all federal money.
that we brought
It's
in,
still
okay?
money.
All
I'm
federal
sorry.
money.
But it's $5 million for 25 units. That's $200,000 a unit.
Well,
$330,000 a year.
if I can take it back
All
to the arts
federal
for a
money.
moment, maybe
Yeah,
we'll
sure,
get into
sure.
No, again, I mentioned up front when we were talking about the relationship with the university. I mean, looking with how can we further work with the university and talking about not just programming, but also use of space and use of space downtown. And I would love us to be able to have the vision to think about the Bloomington Entertainment and Arts District. We talk about it. It is a nice marketing framework, but also thinking about in the future development of our downtown, creating a stable space for our arts community, because you know we have some places and arts organizations that are at the whim of landlords, and can we have a much stronger central sense of what that bead could be, and that idea of developing out theater space, office space, practice space, making it much more dynamic in our city core, I think is something that is worth, again, that long-term visioning about what we want our downtown to be.
Well, I appreciate the correction
Wrapping up
about
on
the
this, John.
330.
We need to move on. Sorry. The next question, all of you have touched on this, I believe, to some degree, but we have gotten, I'd say almost probably, the majority of our questions have related to homelessness. So I would like to specifically ask the question, what would you do as mayor to combat homelessness?
Starting
Who's turn?
with Daryl.
Daryl.
All right.
Thank you.
One of the first steps that I think that the city has invested in, it's that partnership with the Downtown Outreach Resource Officer. That program has been an exceptionally successful program in its first year. We need to continue to invest in it. And what this allows is we have a Bloomington Police Department paired with a street social worker and getting people who are experiencing homelessness and connecting with the resources that they need. And this project in its first year has seen a reduction of 55% of police engagements. We've seen a reduction of 50% of arrests, and we've seen a reduction of 33% visits to the emergency room. It's a program that has been working, and we need to continue to invest in it. The second step that I think is important, and we had the community charrettes on homelessness that were a partnership with the Community Foundation, the City of Bloomington, the United Way, and Rotary. And we have the charrettes, and in September 2014, they released a template for a plan. And it's time, and I had a conversation with Lillian Henniger earlier today. She is heading up the South Central Housing Network coordination of that plan and reconvening the core partners so we can pull together the community stakeholders in developing a community plan for addressing homelessness. This is going to it's a major challenge in coordinating not only social services but local government and the private sector and how we are going to fund and provide the services to those who are most in need. And there's great work being done by our social service agencies. But this broader coordinated plan is a great long-term vision for our community to move forward.
Okay. First off, I'm pretty sure I'm the only person up here that's ever been homeless. I've ridden freight trains all over the country, slept in boxcars, slept under bridges, out in fields. I've been, more than once, I've been thousands and thousands of miles from home, totally broke. So, you know, I know that situation. So, I don't know, it might come as a shock to you that I think okay. Bloomington is a beautiful place. It's an exciting place. It's a place with people with a big heart. And if you look at a place like Kokomo, they don't have a homeless problem, you know. We have what you might call a homeless problem. Some people would call it a vagrancy problem. I personally think, and this is going to make me unpopular, maybe this makes me look like I'm up from the right wing, but I think we've done. I think the city has done enough. I think private organizations, I think individuals, they should be encouraged to do all kinds of things. I appreciate what John is doing here. But, you know, there are a lot of people, you know, my wife, for example, she feels threatened. You know, she doesn't feel like she can go down to People's Park. She doesn't feel like she can walk on Fifth Street. She doesn't feel comfortable being hassled by people that are lying around drunk or panhandling, you know, and I think that's a reasonable thing.
Thank you.
There's a lot of things to say about this. The police are doing well with downtown resource officers. Has been a good development. Jack Hopkins grants have been important from the city. 40% of the homeless people, and there are hundreds of homeless people in our community, 40% of the homeless people are families with children. Now, I don't want to blame those kids, right? Yeah. So here's what I want our community to be able to do. Here's what I think our community can do. We actually have a plan from the South Central Housing Network. We have a plan that says in 5 years, Bloomington will eliminate family and children homelessness. We can do that, and as your mayor, I will help make that happen. We have a plan that says in 5 years we can eliminate chronic homeless. These are the people most likely to die on the street in the next year. Many of them addicted, many of them with serious mental health issues, and when we get them into housing like we did at Crawford, which was new federal money that we got as a grant from Shalom with Life Designs and a lot of help, They cut down their prison time 80%, saves us money. They don't go to the hospital they go two-thirds less, saves us money. They got jobs, they got health care. We can do that. That leaves us, and it's brave of you to talk. You were homeless once. You had a bad stretcher you chose. A lot of other people are homeless who we need to then help get jobs and help them stay in their apartments, and we can do those things. Now, that is harder to eliminate, but we can eliminate children and family homelessness and chronic homelessness, and that would be quite a story for our community to say, right? That to me is how we live our values. We don't just talk, we walk, and we can do that. There are terrific nonprofits out there. Some of them are struggling right now. We need to get them together, and I'll work on that.
Thank you. We are going to, in the interest of time, go to 3 minutes of open discussion.
John, that plan is a great plan from South Central Housing Network, but it needs further development. Unless it's been developed in detail with identifying those specific agencies that are delivering those specific services and allocated and understanding the dollars that are going to be tied to it. And one of the considerations that, and we say it is more than talk, this is a community engagement to ensure that we get broad buy-in, because we know that there's a lot of private sector money sitting on the sidelines waiting to be invested in a plan that people believe in. And this is where that broader engagement, it's absolutely necessary. And in driving that forward, that does take leadership. It does take pulling people into this process so that we can not just only coordinate services, but find ways to get efficiencies in delivering those services. Find ways that we can get those private partnerships to not only drive money into the system, but also be able to provide support. And acknowledging, and rapid rehousing is an important part of this component, but another important part, and we've got to continue to look at that continuum of care. The continuum of care is absolutely essential. And when we talk about, we have key gaps, the delivery of mental health services, we need to be sure that we fill this in. It's a dramatic need. Addiction and recovery services. I know that there have been long-time conversations about bringing that support in.
We have
Thank
a
you.
brief amount of time. We really need to let the other two candidates speak as well. Thank you, Joe.
Oh, okay. Well, first off, I'm not so hard-hearted as you might think. This last year, a young man that was working for me, I knew to be a good person, stayed for a year in my basement on house arrest. And, there's many a hobo that's crashed out on my couch. I believe in that kind of thing. I believe in helping people and so forth. But, true hobo takes pride in the fact that they don't steal and they don't beg. And so I think we should ask that people to take a little responsibility, as well as, sort of being, I'm a very big person, I'm looking down on you. I mean, that's not good for them, that's not good for you.
Chance to get in on this.
Responsibility is really important. I agree with that. People who are experiencing homelessness typically do not want to be there. They want to do something else. I want a community that treats our friends and neighbors as we would like our mothers or our sisters or our sons or our fathers to be treated. And we can do that. We actually can. We are doing it. We have a plan. We need action. And actually, you know what? We have Crawford 1. We're going to apply for Crawford 2. Because we can get more federal money, because it saved us money. It saved lives of 55 people who were at risk of dying on the streets. And it saved our local community money, and it's the right thing to do. So I, as a mayor, will be committed to lead on this. It absolutely takes coordination with all the nonprofit organizations, and that's what we'll do. And we'll get it done.
All right. This will be the one final question before closing statements. And so can And we're going to start with Mr. Linnemeyer. And if you can identify some mistakes that you have made throughout your professional career, and what have you learned from them?
Oh my God, I don't know where to begin. I wouldn't know where to begin. Read my book and you'll see a million things that I learned from. My good God, you know. But somebody once said that everything in life is a lesson or a blessing. And if you have a blessing, well, that's a blessing. But if you have a lesson and you learn from that lesson, then that's a blessing too. So in other words, everything can be a blessing. And yeah, what can I say? Buy a copy of my book and you'll see all the mistakes I've made in my life. Probably make a few more, but you know, I'm doing the best I can. I think I'm doing okay. I guess I wasn't very specific, was I? Yeah, I mean, I was addicted to opium. I was addicted to heroin. I was addicted to cigarettes, and I'm not addicted to any of them anymore. And I don't like. You know, we're talking about drugs. Well, there's a difference between marijuana, peyote, ayahuasca, and heroin, cocaine, crack, methamphetamines. You know, to call all of those drugs is crazy. You know, they're totally different things. So. You know, these addictive drugs, they're poison. That's all there is to it. And people ought to stick away from them. But other things, actually, I think can widen your consciousness. There you go.
That's a great question for a job interview, which is, you know, like a candidate talk. So I think you know, one of my favorite lines from government was somebody asking. It wasn't me though. They were asking another person who had just taken a job, chief of staff to the governor, and they went and they said, "What's the biggest mistake you've made?" And he said, "Well, I know I've made it. I just don't know which it is yet." You know, I mean, sometimes you find out down the road what your biggest mistake is. I think I would mention a couple. One, when I was at the Family and Social Services Administration, I really had a conflict. I am not a mental health professional. I'm not trained in mental health care, but I was responsible for the mental hospitals in the state. And there was a mental hospital in Evansville, Indiana, for children that had been there a long time, many decades. And the professionals in the mental health system said, the kids in this hospital are not getting the right care. These kids should not be in a hospital setting. Some of them were 4 years old, 6 years old. They had serious mental issues, but they needed to be in a community setting. And I said, okay, well, let's close that hospital, which was a move. There was a move overall. We've had a lot of reduction of hospitalization, and but that community, that was a mistake. That community felt like that was their hospital for their kids. And even though the professionals said this is better, and I, not being a mental health professional, listened to that. It turned into a big political fight. And then, unfortunately, my mistake, that then becomes a political debate rather than a clinical what's best for the kids debate. And so there may have been ways I could have engaged more deeply with the community ahead of time. So, you know, you live and you learn and you try to balance the expert's advice with the common wisdom and the sense of what belongs to people. So.
Dare I say it? The biggest mistake in my life was being a Republican at one point.
There you go, bro.
You know, it's been raised and I found the light. I made a choice. I am a Democrat. I've been elected as a Democrat, and I govern as a Democrat, and I'm glad to be here. one of the mistakes that I made, and it was a council, I'll point to a council vote that I wish I had back. It was a council vote. There was an enterprise zone investment deduction. And it's basically a 10-year abatement. And the problem was that the state didn't give local government guidance as how to structure it. It basically says if it's here, here's the application. If it's located within the urban enterprise area and within the TIF, it's the council's discretion, no guidance. And I supported it. And I felt bad about it when it was done. And so the corrective was, let's put guidelines in place that make it easier for us to make decisions. And that's what we did. I put together a piece of legislation that tied those decisions to issues of living wage, impact on TIF, a variety of other issues about talking about job creation. And that was the corrective that we put into place. And we saw a dramatic drop in that approval process. It gave us a framework, and it helped us do our job better. And that was a mistake that I regret, but I'm grateful for where we are today, because I think our council is better for it.
Born again.
Are we having any discussion?
3 minutes of open discussion, then we'll go to closing
Maybe
remarks.
my biggest mistake was preparing notes for tonight that I couldn't. That might have been my biggest professional mistake. I don't know if we want to discuss each other's professional mistakes, but, you know, that's a sensitive subject, isn't it?
We're supposed to discuss our mistakes.
That's the province of the candidates. We can move
Start
on.
taking shots at one another, is that what we're gonna do? We'll go ahead and move on to closing remarks.
Yeah, we're
we start-
speechless for
And we're
once.
starting with Mr. Neer.
Yes. Pardon?
Let's go to the next one.
We were instructed otherwise by the
We were
college.
instructed by the host to start with Mr. Neer. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you want to explain it?
The reason for doing so is because the favored position for an opening statement is perceived to be the first person who goes on. The favored position for the closing statement is perceived to be the last person who speaks. And so we don't want to give the same person the most coveted position.
I want to thank you all for being here, and again, thanks for the opportunity to the Indiana University College Democrats and the Monroe County Democratic Party for giving us this opportunity this evening. And I appreciate the ability to lay out what we want to see for this community, and particularly one of the most telling questions that's come up for me on the campaign trail thus far is, what do you want your legacy to be? And I think it was an unexpected question, but the answer is very direct. I want to be known that I worked to protect the character of community and that I acted as a just man. And that's the goal. And I can tell you, at this point, however we move forward as a community, I want to make sure that we put humanity at the center of government, including it starts within City Hall, in empowering our employees to do the best work in the delivery of service because they are good people, putting it at the center of policy and understanding that the policies that we pass and the impact on individuals. And it is about putting the humanity in the interactions of the mayor's office with the community and being engaged throughout. That is my overall goal. And over the past decade, I've been really happy to be involved in leading the debates and discussions when I was hosting talk radio. And I know that those conversations, those introduced me to politics, those introduced me to the issues that have shaped the community at this point. But in the last 3.5 years, being in the center of the city council process and managing difficult issues on a day-to-day basis, developing those relationships. I'm proud of that, and I look forward to earning your trust and support on May 5th. Thank you.
Okay. A lot of people feel that some of my ideas are too difficult, you know. And I think you have to you know, that they're not the ideas of a careful politician. I'm not a careful politician. I don't want to be a careful politician. But it wasn't careful politicians, you know, careful politicians in Colorado were saying, hey, you know, you can't do it, it contravenes the federal law and blah, 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 but they did it anyway. And there are a lot of things like that. You know, in the American Revolution, careful politicians were going, hey, we got a good king, you know, what the heck, let's bow down in front of him. And there was a certain number of people that said, I'm not going to bow down in front of that guy. I want to stand up. I want to be a free man. So I think there are an awful lot of things like that that depend on a person actually standing up and doing what needs to be done. I realize, let me be realistic with you. Out in town, I'm going to have a hard time winning this election. I think I can do pretty well, but the chances are not too good. But I think there is a way, and it's going to take students. Too bad there aren't more students here. It's going to take some students to go out and register 2,500 voters. If we can get 2,500 voters registered, we can win it. So, you know, I'm counting on you. Don't let me down.
I want to thank you all for being here, spending your time with us. I want to thank my fellow candidates, and John, you're running, you're making this a good race. Darrell, you're making it a good race. It's not easy to do this kind of thing, and it's how democracy gets better, by this kind of competition. So everybody up here is working hard for the city, I know, to try to make it better. I certainly look forward to working with all the hard-working employees of the city as well, who make this city on our behalf a better place every day. I'm very proud to have been endorsed by the firefighters, some of the hardest working city employees for my election. I do want to say, please go to the website. We didn't have time to talk about a lot of details. I believe you need to look at the detailed plans that we have. I want you to dig into that. I want you to think about that. You get what you see with me. I've worked my whole life to put progressive values into action. I'm really proud of what we've done. I want you to look at my record of accomplishment, from environmental issues to social service issues to economic justice and racial justice. I think as a city, we all want to walk the walk. We want to be as good a city as we can. We share those progressive values, and we want to show them to the rest of our fellow citizens. Work in our region. We're a leader in this region. And I want us to keep getting better and better at what we do. Here's what you can do. You can register to vote. Most of you here probably are, because you're the elite, as we said, that you care this much. Fewer than 10% of registered voters are going to vote in this election. So tell people to register. Get out there. Get involved in a campaign, any of our campaigns. It's great. It's fun, and we need you. And talk to your neighbors. I really look forward to what Bloomington's going to be like. We are given a great gift of this community, and I want to be sure we do the work needed to pass it along. I heard a quote that I liked that said, "The future is not a gift, it is an achievement." And I look forward to working with you to achieve what we can for this city in the years ahead. Thank you.
Thanks thanks again to all the candidates, and thanks to Katz for actually being here for us. Katz is such a valuable part of our community. We appreciate them being here as well. And then let's have one more round for the candidates. With or without notes, they did an excellent job, and thanks again to all of you for being here.